Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this fireside chat. My name is Nadia Quesi Kulibali, Head of Research at AVCA. So today's conversation is titled Breaking the Mold, Uncharted Road to Success, and few companies illustrate that theme better than M-KOPA. And I'm sure you know M-KOPA. So founded in 2011, M-KOPA began with a simple but powerful idea, using pay-as-you-go technology to provide access to essential assets for households excluded from traditional finance. And over the past 15 years, I believe, that idea has evolved into a multi-product financial platform, reaching close to 10 million customers today across Africa. So I'm delighted to be joined by Jess Moo, co-founder and CEO of M-KOPA. Jesse, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I think I would like to kick the conversation around the origin of M-KOPA and the early years. So before founding the business, you work across consulting, humanitarian work, and telecom. And you relocated to Nairobi back in 2010 at a time when the startup ecosystem was very nascent, right? So I would like to understand when and why did you decide that building a for-profit business rather than working maybe in development sectors was the only way to achieve scale? And what did you have to get it right at the early stage of the company?
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. And I would like to answer that question by referring to a visit that I made in 2004 or 2005 to a farm, a couple hours drive towards Mombasa from here with this gentleman. I was hoping George was in the room. So George and I, George Odo, if you don't know George, he's the managing partner of Africa Invest, and I can proudly say now an investor in the M-KOPA cap table after many years. But George and I in 2005 were down in Kibwezi, and this is all a very true story, and I can't tell you, well, you'll hear in a moment why this was such a transformative sort of meeting in my career. George and I at the time worked for CARE, which is a big humanitarian charity, but we were the weird guys at CARE because we thought we might create even more impact if we were able to create companies that would help the same types of beneficiaries, but as customers and as partners. And so George and I are with these farmers that we were working with, and we're having a consultation about the company that we're trying to start with them. And what was novel was that all of these farmers kept going into their pockets and getting a little thing and putting it back in their pocket. And I realized that they were taking cell phones, mobile phones, out of their pockets. And these were little Nokia, C51s or whatever they're called, little simple mobile phones, which so far is the most unremarkable story you've ever heard, right? It's like, yeah, so what? The so what is this was 2005, and I'm Canadian, and my parents in Canada in 2005, my dad was an architect, my mom a teacher, they did not have a cell phone. But these farmers who were really eking it out in Kibwezi, almost subsistence level, they had a mobile phone. And that was the big, crazy phenomenon for me to realize, is that these farmers had phones before my parents did. And if you unpacked why, it was the leapfrogging and transformative nature of that technology in their pocket that would allow them to save money and make money in ways that my parents back in Canada didn't really appreciate or need. And so literally within a couple hours, and then probably a drink in the evening with George around that experience, to me it became very clear that not only the speed and the potential of technology transformation in Kibwezi would far exceed what I would ever realize in Ottawa, but also that could be a huge positive impact on their lives. Back to my parents in 2005, when I remember going home from that trip, and I said, Mom and Dad, why don't you have a mobile phone? And their answer was, well, why would we need one? Right? We got this thing here called a landline, for those who remember that, and that has a thing called a voicemail system, so people can leave us, messages. And I don't really need to be able to talk to people through a mobile device. The same question, though, of these farmers at the time led to very effusive and highly articulate price per second understanding of the cost structures of using Safaricom's network to call their mother or call the market and find out what the price was for tomatoes that day and make informed decisions that would save them money. And so it wasn't just that this would become a mega big industry and would lead to a ton of opportunity to create profit, but also that these farmers' lives would be transformed. And finally, and I don't know if George remembers this, but I asked those farmers if going forward, Nokia and Safaricom were going to be more important than Care. And the way I actually said it is, if we disappeared tomorrow, if George and I and Care disappeared tomorrow, or if your phones disappeared tomorrow, what would be more detrimental to your life? And I can remember these farmers being very anxious at this question, and they looked to the chairman, and he kind of got up the gumption to say first, and he's like, I need this phone more than I need you. And I was like, well, shoot, I'm in the wrong industry, you know? So that was the beginning of eventually then what became M-KOPA. Just to finish the story, I went off to business school because I realized I didn't know much about business, and I wanted to be able to understand that better. And that led to a lucky break, which was in 2006, working on M-PESA at very early stages. So that brought me back to Kenya. And then 4 years later with Nick Hughes, whom some of you may know. Nick was the founder of the M-PESA product within Vodafone Group and my boss at the time. We took a big leap of faith in 2010 to go off on our own, and we started what became M-KOPA. And so that's where it all began.
Thank you, Jesse. I think 15 years from the beginning of M-KOPA, I would like to deep dive into the evolution of the business, right, and the strategic shift. M-KOPA began, as I said, as pay-as-you-go solar provider, and has since evolved into broader platform, financing smartphone 2020, digital services 2022, and now e-mobility 2023. So what drove this strategic shift, and how did you decide when it was the right time to expand beyond the core product?
Sure. Well, if I had my original 5 or 6 slides in the first pitch deck, there wasn't a business, there wasn't a brand, there was no employees, there was no customers, there was an idea. The idea combined 2 technologies into what I think you would now just refer to as a pay-as-you-go proposition. And those 2 technologies were, 1, mobile money or something like it, digital payments, which M-PESA has obviously conquered here in Kenya, but MTN, Momo, and other markets or other banking services, there's plenty of ways to collect money digitally today. But back in 2010, this was pretty new. And what was amazing about it is you could believe that there was a near future coming where all these farmers could send you 30 shillings or 70 shillings or a few naira instantly. On the other hand, we were seeing the evolution of connectivity, what we might have called the IoT, Internet of Things, but things were becoming more connected to the internet. And the simple concept was, well, if you had a connected device, you could switch it on or off based on tiny micropayments. And that could eventually scale to where we are now as a business. We collect over 2 million payments a day from millions and millions of customers across 5 countries in Africa. So it started with this idea of mobile payments or digital payments and daily payments with asset connectivity to create a sort of micro asset leasing platform. And then you overlaid that against the demographic that we wanted to serve, which was not any of us here in the room today and nobody in Upper Hill. It is to serve customers in Kibwezi or further afield that we now at M-KOPA call everyday earners. You will all know this very well, but Africa is home to many everyday earners. Well over 8 in 10 adults on the continent do not have a job in the formal sense. They don't have a paycheck that came to them maybe this morning or last Friday because it's the end of April. Instead, they make money every single day by being an Uber driver, by being a farmer, by being a hairdresser, by being a carpenter. These are the people who make up the economic bedrock of not only this continent, but much of the world. In fact, I think we were just looking the other day, there are 3.5 billion economically active adults on the globe, and 2/3 of them are everyday earners. They do not have jobs. We believe that that has led to them being underserved, right? And whilst we do a lot of great business with banks, banks aren't really wired for the needs of everyday earners. And what we saw in daily payment collection and IoT connectivity was this opportunity to create an economic platform that wasn't simply about the device that we would provide them. And I'll come to your question in a minute. Like, this is why M-KOPA has gone from solar panels into mobile phones and into EVs, and we may go into other products later, because the product in its physical expression is not really the point. The point is to start a relationship with the customer by financing a productive asset that'll help them save and make money in their lives. And that becomes the basis for then a bigger financing relationship and the opportunity to cross-sell to them a myriad of other services. And today we've sold over 1 million health insurance policies in partnership with Turaco. Some of you probably invested in Turaco. We also cross-sell Safaricom services at a cheaper rate to customers because they can subscribe with us. And the list goes on, but the point is that we believe that the asset is the beginning of a financing proposition. And so, yes, it started with solar panels for farmers like those guys in Kibwezi, but in 2020, we added mobile phones or smartphones. Today, we sell over 10,000 smartphones per day across the continent. And now we're moving into EVs. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jesse. So today you have, as I mentioned before, 10 million customers. M-KOPA achieved profitability in 2024, reporting 1.2 billion Kenyan shilling. What had to work operationally to allow the business to scale to that level?
That's a great question. I love this one because, on the one hand, M-KOPA is very much a digital business. I'd say digital first, but we love operations. And some of you, I think, who are gathered here this week will come and visit our phone assembly factory. We run the largest smartphone assembly factory in Africa, employing over 400 people. It's about 10 minutes drive from here. And it's an incredible but very physical location where young people are given jobs to go and make phones. We're also building the biggest refurbishment center for smartphones on the continent. In addition to the manufacturing that we do ourselves, we have also built a very unique distribution. And that distribution is not online because our customers aren't online yet. So it's going to be hard to reach them if we, posted something online to say, buy here. No, instead we have to take the internet to our customers. And we do that now through over 40,000 agents who have our stock in their backpacks this morning. Yeah. Now that was very long, very difficult and long journey to build the operations to be able to deploy 40,000 human beings into villages and markets on a single daily basis. It is highly digital, right? So the head of sales for M-KOPA across 5 markets could sit here right now with their application and basically show you what's going on everywhere in real time. But it required that we were willing to roll our sleeves up and build a business that has both a significant ground operation as well as significant technology. And I think that's so important for anybody to be ready to do in building or investing in businesses on the continent, which isn't to say there may not be great business opportunities which are fully online, but I think there has been a bit of a misnomer built on the success of Silicon Valley and other places that you can sort of launch an app and you're done. The truth of what we've had to build is, and why it's taken 15 years to get to this scale, is because there is also a huge amount of operating capacity on the ground that we need to supplement with technology. And we're very proud of the fact that we have 3,000 full-time employees in addition to the 40,000 agents that make an income every month from our business. But that sort of human element is maybe the untold story of the technology that we've deployed.
Thank you. So now I understand that your disciplined relationship with a customer is part of the DNA of M-KOPA. Maybe we'll now move and shift to your relationship with investors. I believe your approach also relies on extending credit to customers. As we mentioned before, how did you convince your investors that this model could be both commercially and viable and scalable? And how has your approach to fundraising and capital utilization evolved as M-KOPA matured?
Well, today's been a fun day, actually. It's been a bit of a history or memory lane for me on the investor side. I saw my very first investor in Saskia Vandermast. I don't think she's in the room now, but Saskia used to be with DOB Equity. And they were one of the very first 2 checks that we got in 2010 on that slide deck of 6 slides. And now, I can look at George, who's one of our most recent investors in Africa Invest in the cap table. Sumitomo Corporation, I know, is also here. They're our largest shareholder today. So we've gone on a journey across many different investors over time. We've proudly been able to facilitate some exits for early shareholders when they were ready. We've also raised a significant amount of debt. So our business is very capital intensive. And we're very proud to have today over $350 million of commercial grade debt in the business, led by Standard Bank and many of the other leading banks across the continent. NCBA, who's just down the road here, another one. So, M-KOPA has really been on a big journey for deployment or raising of capital and deployment of capital. And in the end, one way to think of the business is creating a bridge between global capital that seeks a return and everyday earners who are not sort of naturally fit for purpose in the 30-day salaried world from a banking perspective. I remember pitching for, I think what was a grant, back in 2010, 2011, and they wanted a theory of change. What was your theory of change for this grant? It was a grant that was going to be used as debt. And I said, well, the theory of change that we should believe in is we could deploy billions of dollars of commercial capital into the pockets of everyday earners, right? Wouldn't that be amazing? And that's now where we are, which is great. But we've had to grow as a business and evolve over time to be able to enlist those different degrees of capital. We now have the IFC as a major lender. We have a lot of great partners in M-KOPA. So it's been a journey. I credit the team that's come with us and bringing in exceptional talent, both at the management level and at the board level, to help the company continue to grow and develop as the needs of the business evolve.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. I know we're running out of time now. Just maybe to wrap up and close, I think it's a question that's very important. What's the next wave of growth looks like for M-KOPA, like a future plan? Just maybe in 1 minute.
Sure, in 1 minute. First, foremost, and always, our focus is on customers. With all due respect to our investors and our employees, like we all get up in the morning to service our customers, and if we are making them happy, we will get more customers, we will scale, and the rest will kind of follow. All right. So I always think of the future of M-KOPA in its customer depth and penetration. We will proudly achieve or reach our 10 millionth customer in the next couple of days, sometime in early May. I think the next frontier for us is 100 million customers, and we now take on board more than 10,000 customers daily. So while 100 million customers won't come next week, it is definitely in our purview to get to that scale. I do expect that we will introduce over time other products, but the smartphone to me remains the key economic enabler for digital and economic inclusion. And I think with AI, the importance of good quality compute in somebody's hand is really that unlock that can allow, again, the farmer or the hairdresser or the Uber driver to grow their income and become more profitable in their own business. And if we do that well, the rest will take care of itself.